The first time I heard my daughter-in-law call me an embarrassment. It wasn't whispered behind closed doors. It was said right in the living room, where the chandeliers glittered and the aroma of roasted lamb filled the air. I was setting down a tray of tea, careful not to spill, when she laughed with her friends and tossed the words out as if they were harmless. She's sweet, but honestly, sometimes she's just a family embarrassment. The women giggled, sipping their wine, and not one of them looked my way. I stood frozen for a moment, the tray trembling slightly in my hands. An embarrassment. I, who had raised her husband alone after his father's untimely death. I, who had sacrificed dreams, comforts, and my own pride to make sure my son became the man he was today. The words cut deep, but I swallowed my hurt. I smiled, as if I hadn't heard, and poured the tea with steady hands. That's what mothers do. We steady ourselves, even when the ground beneath us is shaking. My name is Sophia, and I am 58 years old, a widow for nearly 2 decades. I had built my life around one person, my son Adel. He had been my pride, my reason to rise every morning, my proof to the world that despite the struggles of widowhood, I could raise a strong, educated, kind man. When he married Ayesha 5 years ago, I thought my family was finally complete. But Ayesha never saw me as part of that picture. At first, her slights were subtle. A comment about my old-fashioned clothes, a wrinkled nose at the smell of the lentil soup I cooked, a sigh when I joined them at the dining table. I told myself it was adjustment, the clashing of 2 generations. But with time, her comments grew sharper, her laughter louder, and her disrespect bolder. "You shouldn't say that in public, Mama," she told me one evening after I mispronounced the name of an expensive Italian restaurant. "It makes you sound ignorant. People will think we're not polished." As if I were an outsider dragging down their perfect image. I began to notice how much Ayesha cared for appearances. Their home was a gallery of glass and steel, not warmth and wood. The shelves displayed brands, not memories. Even her smile, painted perfectly with shades of coral and gloss, seemed practiced. She introduced herself at parties not as Adel's wife, but as the marketing director of her company, me. I was simply his mother, sometimes not even that, still, I endured. For Adel's sake, he worked long hours at the bank, and I didn't want to burden him with household tensions. I told myself that if I stayed quiet, Ayesha would eventually soften. After all, I wasn't asking for much, just respect. But the night of that tea party, something shifted. Later, when the guests had left, I heard them arguing in their room. Ayesha's voice was sharp, her words slicing through the air. "Why must she live with us? All my friends say it's embarrassing that a grown man still has his mother under his roof. She doesn't even do anything. Adel, she just exists." I clutched my chest, my breath shallow. Every word was a dagger, an embarrassment, a burden, someone who just existed. Adel tried to defend me. God bless his heart. "She raised me, Ayesha. Everything I have is because of her. Please don't talk about her like that." But Ayesha was relentless. "We're trying to build a future, and she's stuck in the past. She has no career, no hobbies, nothing to show for herself. Don't you see? She drags us down. We'll never be taken seriously in our circle, if she keeps being this way." I pressed my fist against my lips to stifle the sob that threatened to escape. My son, torn between his wife and his mother, didn't need to know I had overheard. I retreated to my room and sat in the dark, the silence pressing heavily around me. That night, for the first time in years, I questioned myself. Maybe Ayesha was right. What had I become? A woman who woke up, cooked meals, watered the plants, and waited for the day to end. I had once been a schoolteacher, brimming with ideas and stories for children. But after Adel's father died, I gave up everything to focus on survival. My life had shrunk to the size of my sacrifices. I stared at my hands, wrinkled, calloused, ordinary, hands that had worked, cared, and created, but never built anything for myself. I told myself I didn't mind. That motherhood was enough. That sacrifice was noble. But in that moment, with the echo of her laughter still ringing in my ears, something inside me cracked. And in the crack, a seed of determination quietly slipped in. I didn't know then how far that seed would grow, or how it would one day make me the face on the cover of Forbes. All I knew was that I could no longer bear to be anyone's embarrassment. Not anymore. The days that followed were heavy with silence. I avoided Ayesha's eyes, not because I feared her, but because I feared what I might see reflected there. Contempt, pity, or worse, indifference. I moved like a shadow in the house, cooking, cleaning, arranging flowers in vases no one noticed, folding laundry that smelled of perfumes I couldn't pronounce. But inside, I was restless. The word embarrassment echoed endlessly in my head, like a bell that refused to stop ringing. Every time Ayesha's friends visited, I felt smaller, invisible, and yet in the quiet moments, when the house was empty, when the afternoon sunlight stretched long across the kitchen table, I found myself staring at my hands again. They weren't useless hands. They remembered things. One morning, while rummaging through the storage trunk in my room, I stumbled upon an old collection of fabric scraps, bits of cloth I used to save when Adel was little. My husband had always joked that I couldn't throw anything away. But to me, those scraps had stories: the blue gingham from Adel's school uniform, the cream lace from our old curtains, the sturdy cotton from the apron I wore when I baked his favorite bread. I sat there for a long time, fingers running across the textures. Out of habit, I pulled out a needle and thread. Without thinking, I began stitching the scraps together, forming a patchwork square. The rhythm of it soothed me. The push of the needle, the tug of the thread, the soft rustle of fabric folding into new shapes. By evening, I had created a small, colorful tote bag. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of pride. The next day, I carried the tote with me when I went to the corner shop. At the counter, Mrs. Khan, my elderly neighbor, spotted it. "Sophia, where did you buy this? It's beautiful." The heat rushed to my cheeks. "Oh, no. I made it, just an old thing from scraps." But she grabbed it, examined it, and shook her head in disbelief. "You should make more of these. People would love them, especially now. Everyone's talking about reusable bags and sustainable living. You could sell them." Sell them? The thought seemed ridiculous. Me? Start something? At my age? I laughed it off, but the seed that had been planted weeks ago began to sprout. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the bag, running my hands over the uneven stitches, imagining how it could look if I tried harder, if I refined it. The next morning, I pulled out more scraps. Days turned into weeks, and soon I had a small collection: bags, cushion covers, even fabric pouches. I began experimenting, using old denim, saris, curtains, turning what was discarded into something useful, even beautiful. Still, doubt gnawed at me. Who would care about what I make? It was my neighbor again who pushed me further. One afternoon, she took a photo of the bag I gifted her and posted it online. To my shock, people began asking where they could buy one. She showed me the comments, and my heart raced. For the first time in years, strangers were interested in something I had created. I hesitated. My son didn't know. Ayesha would surely mock me if she found out, but something inside urged me to try. I asked a young boy in the neighborhood to help me set up a simple online page. I named it Second Life Designs, because everything I made gave discarded fabric a second chance, just as I hoped to give myself one. The page was humble, with photos taken in the backyard, but within a week, I received my first order. A woman wanted 2 bags for her daughters. When the payment came through, small as it was, I sat there staring at the confirmation, tears blurring my eyes. I had earned something. Not from sacrifice, not from pity, not because I was someone's mother or someone's wife, but because of me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an embarrassment. I felt alive. What I didn't know then was that my simple bags, stitched from scraps, would soon carry me to places I had never imagined. That they would carry me all the way to the glossy pages of Forbes. But for now, I stitched quietly in my room, my secret growing with every seam. Like a flame carefully shielded from the wind, the orders kept trickling in. First from neighbors, then from strangers who had stumbled upon my little online page. At first, I was terrified. What if they didn't like the bags? What if the stitches unraveled? What if they laughed the way Ayesha did when she found flaws in anything I touched? But the messages that followed were not ridicule. They were gratitude. "This bag is so sturdy. My daughter carries it to school every day. I love that it's made from recycled fabric. Do you take custom orders?" Finally, something beautiful and sustainable. Each message was like a salve on old wounds. With every thank you, I felt a piece of the word embarrassment peel away from me. I began working late into the night, after the house had gone quiet. I stitched under the soft glow of my lamp, the silence broken only by the hum of crickets outside. Sometimes my back ached, sometimes my fingers pricked in blood, but I didn't care. I was building something. something of my own. I kept it a secret from Adil and Ayesha. Not out of fear anymore, but because it felt precious, fragile, like a bird learning to fly. I wasn't ready to expose it to judgment. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of my customers, a young journalist, emailed me asking if she could feature Second Life designs in a small lifestyle blog. "It's such an inspiring story," she wrote. "A woman turning waste into art. It deserves to be heard." My first instinct was to decline. Me. Inspiring. I was no entrepreneur. I was just Sophia, a widow who stitched scraps. But something inside whispered, "Say yes." So I did. The article went live a week later. To my astonishment, the little blog caught fire. People shared it, reposted it, tagged friends. Orders surged. Suddenly, I wasn't just stitching in secret. I was running a business. That's when the calls began. Small shops wanted to stock my bags. A university invited me to speak about sustainability. A local women's cooperative asked if I would teach them how to make the designs. I was overwhelmed, trembling between excitement and fear. But I said yes to everything. And then, one morning, as I was sorting through fabric, an email arrived that made my heart stop. Subject: feature opportunity Forbes. I thought it was a scam at first. But it wasn't. A real editor had seen the viral blog and wanted to interview me for a special feature on women over 50 creating businesses that changed lives. They called me a beacon of blooming entrepreneurship. Me, Sophia, the family embarrassment. I cried that night, silent, heaving sobs of disbelief and release. Not because of Forbes, not even because of the recognition, but because, for the first time in decades, I felt like I had stepped out of the shadows of sacrifice and into the light of my own story. When the article came out, it was more than a feature. It was the cover story. My photograph, simple and unadorned, showed me holding one of my patchwork bags, smiling the way only someone who has rediscovered herself can smile. I didn't tell Adil or Ayesha beforehand. I didn't need to. They found out like everyone else. When the glossy magazine landed in stores, when friends and colleagues began forwarding the link, when my face appeared on social media feeds across the city. At breakfast that morning, Ayesha nearly dropped her cup of coffee when she saw the magazine spread open on the table. Her mouth parted, words fumbling. As she looked from the photo to me, Adil's eyes softened with pride. "Mama, you never told us." I simply folded my hands in my lap and said, "Not everything in life needs permission, Beta. Sometimes, we must build quietly until the world cannot ignore us anymore." For the first time in years, the silence in that house belonged to me. Not to shame, not to mockery, but to awe. And deep inside, I knew the sweetest revenge was not in proving Ayesha wrong. It was in proving myself right. For days after the Forbes issue released, the house buzzed with an energy I had never felt before. Friends called Adil nonstop, congratulating him. Old neighbors who once pitied me sent flowers and messages of pride. Even strangers came to the gate, asking to buy one of the famous bags. But the most striking change was in Ayesha. She who once scoffed at my very presence, now moved awkwardly around me, her eyes darting as though unsure how to speak. The woman who once called me an embarrassment now had to live with the world praising me. The irony hung in the air like perfume, strong, undeniable, impossible to ignore. One evening, as we sat in the living room, she finally broke the silence. "Amma," her voice cracked slightly, the words sounding foreign on her tongue. I had no idea you were doing all this. It's amazing. You should have told us earlier. We could have helped you market it, make it bigger. You know, with my contacts in the corporate world." I looked at her for a long moment. She was trying to weave herself into my story now that it glittered with success. For a fleeting second, the old me, the one desperate for acceptance, might have welcomed her, but not anymore. I set down my cup of tea and spoke gently, my voice steady. "Ayesha, there are some things in life that grow best in silence. If I had told you, you would not have believed in me. You would have laughed, as you always did." Her cheeks flushed. "I didn't mean." I raised my hand slightly, stopping her. "You called me an embarrassment, remember? More than once. You mocked me for having no purpose, no worth. But now the world sees me differently. Do you know why? Because I stopped waiting for your approval." The words were not bitter, but they carried weight. She flinched, the memory of her cruelty reflected in her eyes. Adil, sitting quietly beside us, looked torn, protective of me, but unwilling to shame his wife further. I spared him the burden. I leaned forward, my tone soft but firm. Respect, Ayesha, is not given because of wealth or clothes or titles. It is earned through how we treat people, through what we create, through the kindness we sow. You thought I was nothing, but I was only silent, not empty. Her lips parted, but no words came. For once, Ayesha, the woman who always had something sharp to say, was speechless. I rose, smoothing the folds of my simple cotton shawl. I don't need your apology. I don't need your help. All I need is your respect. And if you cannot give me that, then at least give me peace. I walked away, leaving her in the heavy silence of her own shame. That night, as I sat by my sewing machine, orders piling high, I realized something profound. My revenge wasn't in making her feel small. It was in reclaiming myself, in proving that I was never small to begin with. The next week, I signed a deal with a global eco brand, ensuring Second Life Designs would employ dozens of women like me. Widows, mothers, women forgotten by society. Together, we stitched more than fabric. We stitched dignity back into lives that had been unraveled. And as the world celebrated my journey, I carried no bitterness, only quiet triumph. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge is not in crushing those who doubted you. It's in rising so high, they can do nothing but look up.